Hello and welcome to the Business Advocate. My name is Russell Carrier. I'm the owner of First Choice Business Brokers of East Tennessee in Nashville. We have a special guest today. We have Summer Goldman with Dixon Strategies. She is an COO. And actually, let me make that a little bit clear. She's a fractional COO. If you don't know what that is, tune in. This is what we're going to be discussing today. Summer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I am really looking forward to this. And as people have listened to the podcast, they know I believe in networking. And I've been networking now about a year throughout Tennessee. And I've run into fractional CFOs. I've run into fractional CMOs. You were the first COO. What does a COO do?
Yeah, a lot. So I always feel like I need to call this out that there are actually on the East Coast and West Coast, it's fairly popular. I mean, there's entire firms of fractional COOs. It has not been as popular. I don't run into myself very much here in the middle of the country. I don't do that. So if you think about it, I really focus on family-run businesses and on startups. That's my space. And so it's helpful to understand that, to know what a COO does. So really, it's when an organization needs help with their operations. So I define operations as everything that happens from the sale closed to the system or the product or service delivered to the customer, right? So an operations leader, a COO, makes sure that the structure is in place, the process is in place, and the systems are in place for everything between close of sale to delivery of product.
So when you say close of sale or delivery of product, what do you specifically mean?
Good question. So that there's a commitment made to the customer to deliver something. That to me is the close of sale. The customer has agreed, I will pay this price for this much product. So the agreement's made. And then there's this whole team of people in the middle, but after that, but before delivery, that actually make sure that it happens. So they make the widget, they prepare the service, whatever that may be, but all of that in the middle is operation.
Okay. So I'm thinking about what you're saying here. And I'm thinking of a business in that middle layer from sales to delivery. And that's what you're specifically talking about, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what a COO does is, and I don't mean to speak for you, but I'm just trying to clarify, you're making sure that the process is in place to make that run efficiently?
Yes, the people. So it's three things. It's not just process, but making sure that the people are in place, the process is in place, and then the system's in place.
Okay, so I heard three things. People, process, and systems. So as a business owner, let's discuss those three areas. And every business is different, but at the same time, every business is almost the same. So when you say people, what type of people? I mean, what are you looking for when you walk into a business and they're struggling? What is the people side of it?
That's the biggest part. I'll be honest. The people part ends up being at least 50% of the work. And it's really two buckets. So do you have the right people? So that could be, do you have the right skill set? That could be, do you have the right number of people, right? And then do you have them in the right seat? That's the other piece of it. So are the people, the right skills in the right seat? Is it structured appropriately? Are the handoffs within the process, are they appropriate? And then you start to get into the whole leadership piece. Like, what's the culture like, right? Like, who's really influencing the organization? I mean, you dive deep when you go into people, and that's why it ends up being the majority of my time and energy for sure.
So you go in and investigate what they have in place. If they're missing a person, a people, you point that out. Is this something that you would actually help them find if they don't have it? Or you just point it out and let them do the work?
I point it out and let them do the work. Of course, I'm there to support and advise, but I am not an HR expert. I know just enough to be dangerous. I know all the words that I should watch for. But that's actually one of the, when I'm deciding whether I'm going to work with a new client, one of the questions I always ask is, what's your HR partner like? It could be outsourced, it could be within the organization, but that's a question I ask because I inevitably pop up with people challenges or observations or recommendations.
Okay, very good. Yeah, you're not a fractional HR.
Nope, but I work really closely with some good ones. So, yeah.
Oh, awesome. So you can actually refer somebody.
I can. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. See, this is why networking is important.
It's critical. Yeah.
So the third or second piece was process.
Mm-hmm.
So as a business owner, again, now I've got my people in place, how would an owner even begin to analyze their process? What are they looking for?
Waste is my favorite thing. That's my favorite thing to look for. So I have a firm belief that 99.9% of people come to work every day wanting to do their best work. Okay. And so if that's not happening, right, if there's a failure, if product is not delivered in full on time, if a service is not delivered in a way that a customer has expected it to be, that there's either a performance issue or there's a process issue. And I tend to lean toward process issue because I know that people come to work. They don't come to work in the morning going, I really want to screw this up, right? They just don't do that. And so taking a deep look at process and really looking for waste, looking for opportunities for error, right? Like if there's a communication issue or if we're building a widget, do they have all the parts on demand, right? Do they have all the tools that they need? If are there processes that are manual that should be automated? You're looking for all these opportunities for error and waste, and you eliminate as much of that as possible. And very often that will alleviate the problem. I think it's unreasonable to think that you can get to like 100% perfection. But we're always looking for progress, and those are, looking for waste and error in the process is a great way to get progress. So
we're not going to achieve 100%, but you're going to get as close as you can.
You can try. As long as there's humans doing the work, there's opportunity for a mistake to be made, and that's okay because working with the humans has a lot of upside.
Okay, so when you're looking at these processes,
mm-hmm.
and I work with a lot of business owners, and they're wearing multiple hats.
Yeah.
And so I find a lot of times the process is not near 100%, number one. I find that, I'm trying to say this correctly, I'm just going to say it. Okay. Business owners don't even know what the process should be to begin with. Mm-hmm. And it can be overwhelming to a business owner to even consider this. Is this something that you do in bite-sized chunks? Is that what you recommend?
So, yes, absolutely. I'm not a proponent of, overwhelming any organization with change management, right? So it's not taking a process from use a blue pen at 2:00 on Tuesday to use a red pen at 1:00 on Wednesday, right? Like that's a start stop. That's easy. but the talking to the folks that prefer blue over red and making sure there's enough red pens and potentially taking away all the blue pens and talking about why, like all of that is hard. It's the transition that's hard. It's not the change that's hard. And so to the extent that you can take things in chunks, I think that, I would always err on that side, look for dependencies, have a strategy about what change should occur first. Potentially have, I'm a big proponent of a tester change. So something that's relatively small just to test the change management process in an organization. But more than considering how much change to go through at one time or like how many processes to improve at one time, I think it's critical to consider the culture of the organization. You got to really think through the culture. To me is just like personality, right? Like I know my personality is to move really, really quickly, not get too bogged down in details, right? And so if I'm working with an organization that's like that has a high sense of urgency, that they struggle with detail. So I would know that, okay, we really need to elevate the changes that are going to allow them to go faster and to automate as much as possible, right? So like you would pick that first. So I get a little geeked out over this, Russell, so I can go deep fast.
Well, that's good. That means you love what you do.
Yeah, I do.
So we talked about the owners having trouble with change. Do you find that the people, the employees, have trouble with change?
Yeah. Everybody has trouble with change. I don't care who you are, because at the root of, and this is going to sound very dramatic, but it's like you almost have to say it in a dramatic way to get people's attention. There is some level of grief when you let go of the way you've always done it, even though you hate, for example, a checklist. I hate paper checklists, but there is some pain in moving from a paper checklist to trusting a system, a computer program, for example. There is pain in letting that go. There's a great quote. I love this quote that people will not change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of the change, right? So pain is on both ends. And so we're all wired to resist it. And that's okay.
That's awesome. I love that quote. So let's move on to systems. Mm-hmm. That is your third component. Mm-hmm. What does systems mean to you?
Oh, that could be anything. And it's the smallest component. When I say people, process, system, I'm intentional with the order. Because I believe that systems come last. A lot of people will jump to systems first. So systems could be a computer program, which, it could be an ERP. If you're at a manufacturer, it could be an ERP. It could be some project management tool like Asana or Monday.com. It could even just be the way that parts are delivered. If you're making a widget that has 4 or 5 parts, how are parts delivered to the person that's making the part, right? Like that can be a system. But it's the last component, because the system should be selected to support the people who are doing the process. So the system supports the people and the process. And so, but what happens sometimes is people get really geeked out over a system. They think the system is going to solve everything. And that's not the case. It's the people and the process that solve the thing, and you find a system that supports that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I had a service business when I lived in Florida, providing window screens and door screens.
Okay.
And we had approximately 1,000 different parts. Mm-hmm. And I got all geeked out in QuickBooks.
Yeah.
They had this assembly management inventory where you could truly geek out to put pieces and parts together. Mm-hmm. And so I spent months putting this together.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't put in place was the process. So there was a disconnect, and this is where I wish I had you because we would get the order and I would actually stamp out a build list of everything that needed to be provided to the customer for the technician to go install it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was the technician didn't know where all the parts were.
Right.
It wasn't automated. And so inevitably, they get out to the client site and not have all the right components to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I can relate to this wholeheartedly that people process systems.
Yes, in that order.
It makes perfect sense. Because and I don't care what business it is, if you're missing that middle component, it doesn't matter what people you have and what systems you have. If the process isn't determined,
Mm-hmm.
you're still going to be having waste, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
of time and resources.
Yeah.
So when I think about businesses and owners, when they're looking at their business as a whole, and I touched on it earlier, they're wearing multiple hats. And I know you said people, process, systems. I got to remember this now. In order. When should they call somebody like you? Because
There's a difference between when should they and when they actually do.
So answer that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. Ideal world is I get called before scale, like when there's a preparation for scale, right? And so that's an opportunity to do an analysis on the people, process, and systems in a smaller way, right? When the stakes aren't quite as high. So that would be ideal. Now, but that's not real world. That's not how it happens. There's a couple of things that happen. There's sometimes folks prepare to scale and think that, they think that the process that's working today is going to work in the future. But there's also, and this is one of my favorites, is unanticipated scale, right? Like all of a sudden your product blew up on TikTok, or, like all of a sudden there's a change in the economy that's made your product like boom. And so what really happens is it goes back to that quote about pain and change, is that there's got to be some level of chaos before I get called. Which is great because the more chaotic, the better for me. But there's some level of chaos before I get called.
Okay. So I work with a lot of potential business owners,
Mm-hmm.
first timers that are looking to buy a business.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you talk, the more I think that these people should probably be engaging with somebody like you.
Mm-hmm.
So when they jump into the business, they have these three components in place, knowing, basically giving them a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I'm looking at it, as to how to be most effective when you actually jump in.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with that?
100%. Like ideally, I'm pulled in early stage to help avoid. Now, there's some learning on the fly that goes on, especially when you scale quickly. There's some learning on the fly, but ideally, coming in early stage would be wonderful.
Okay, so let's take it to somebody. They've just started their business now. I mean, I know the answer, but I just want to make sure the people listening, these business owners, as Summer pointed out, you really don't want to do this when something drastically happens to make you change.
Mm-hmm.
You probably want to think about this beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I know as a business owner for over 30 years, business owners don't know what they don't know. So and we haven't talked about costs and what services like this would cost an owner, but I would think it would be extremely wise as an investment towards your business when you're starting out to bring somebody in like you to walk through this, to make sure that right from the beginning that you're running efficiently and not having this waste.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get your message out that this is something needed?
I have been telling my story. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and I've been telling my story for a couple of years. And, every time I've said what I do, the response is always, oh my gosh, I needed that when, or so-and-so needs that, or the need is there. Which I've built a business and, kind of bet my whole professional world on the fact that the need's there. So the need's there. One piece, I just want to circle back to this because this is interesting, because you're right, business owners don't know what they don't know. Even in my situation, I don't know what I don't know, right? But there's a lot that they know that they don't see anymore. And that's actually how I describe what I do, especially in the early stages. I describe very often, I think, think of a spaghetti jar, right? So you've got the sauce on the inside and you've got the label on the outside. Well, the business owner is in the sauce. They're inside the jar. They're making the sauce. Everything of value is inside the jar. But because they're inside, they can't see the label. And so you bring somebody like me in that's going, you need basil. You forgot the basil. You have somebody like me outside reading what the label says. And it's like all of a sudden they're able to see what they know but can't see. And so I just read the label. That's it.
And I think that goes back to business owners wear too many hats.
It is absolutely. They're going 100 miles an hour. It's no fault of their own. And they're always doing good work. They're doing good work and they're passionate about the business. And they get a little stuck in the day to day. And somebody like me can come in and kind of pull them up a little bit and take care of some of the things that allow them to go work on the business rather than in it.
100% agree. And I've said this in many episodes, where when you have a third party that comes in, they have a different lens that they're looking at the business than the owner or even an employee, because they're working in it, as you just pointed out. When you have an independent third party come in, they see things in a completely different way. And you just pointed it out that they may know what needs to be done, but they're so busy with everything else, they can't see it. It's what the forest through the trees scenario. So to give everybody an idea, because I always hated this when I listen to podcasts or watch videos and nobody discusses price. Yeah. What does a service like this typically cost?
Yeah. And you're probably not going to like my answer because it depends. It depends. So there's a couple different products that I offer. One is the actual fractional work. Okay. So I sit in the seat. I am the COO. There are folks that I'm leading. But it's a contract. So it's a 1099. I'm not a W-2 employee, not taking benefits. And that is typically either short-term or part-time. It's very, very often part-time. So there's that piece that is typically a flat monthly fee. Okay. And it really depends on the amount of energy and expertise that I have to use in that role. The second one is where there's an operations person in place. So if somebody's in place and they've started to scale really quickly and they realize that this operations person just hasn't had enough time to develop their skill set to really support the scale of the business. And so in that one, I come in on the behind the scenes. And I just work with that operations person. We'll find out, we'll do a gap analysis on their skill set, figure out which thing we need to work on. It might be, how do you manage multiple projects? It might be, how do you write a good KPI? How do you take a look at processes and get process documents in place? And so there's the tactical piece. There's a little bit of leadership development because there always is. And that piece that's typically a smaller fee. Like it's not because it doesn't take quite as much energy and expertise on my part. And so that is either done monthly, and occasionally that's done at an hourly rate, like you would pay your accountant or an attorney.
Okay. So I am going to nail you down a little bit more.
You keep trying.
Well, just a range. If you're there more on a full-time, on your first scenario, not really full-time, but in a more substantial way, are we looking at $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, $50,000 a month?
No, not with the businesses I work with. So I work with, if I was working with multi-billion-dollar organizations, it would absolutely be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. But I really prefer to stay in the small mid-sized space. And so for me, that looks like that would be a range of, say, thinking in my head, $6,000 to $12,000 a month.
Okay.
Again, it just depends on the energy and expertise. And that's for the fractional COO piece. That would not be full-time. That would be absolutely part-time. And then on the piece where it's more consulting in the background, you're looking at roughly half that.
Okay. So that gives the people listening an idea. Ballpark, right? Nobody knows it. And I think if they don't understand, they need to do a little homework. Anytime any kind of consultant comes into a business, they don't know what they're getting into. So the actual cost will vary. So there's your disclaimer.
Yep.
So Summer won't know until she actually meets you and see where her time is going to be allocated and how much work needs to be done.
Yeah.
But at least
the beauty of a fractional, though, is because it does, I think sometimes people, well, actually, no, I haven't had a lot of folks be super surprised at the cost. But the beauty of a fractional versus hiring somebody into the spot is you can get rid of us a whole lot faster. So if for some reason I'm not performing, this has not been the issue. This has not been a problem so far. But if for some reason I'm not performing, then we end the contract, and it's a quick pivot. So it's a good place to be.
excellent. As you just pointed out, you're not hiring somebody, so you're not dealing with all the HR issues, bringing in an independent third party. You can terminate and move on and find something to do if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So we covered the 3 steps. We covered a little bit of a range of what this would cost an owner. Any other parting words or advice that you would give a business owner today?
We could talk for hours about that. I think if one of the things that pains me a little bit in several of the projects that I have going on and the hats that I wear is when business owners suffer in silence and isolation. And if you're a business owner and you're frustrated right now, or you have a problem in your business that you're trying to solve on your own, that you don't have to. There's people like me, there's people like Russell, there's peer advisory groups, there's all kinds of communities. Like, don't try to solve everything on your own. There's lots and lots of options, and there's tons of people out here like me and like Russell that want to see your business thrive. And so we're here. You just got to ask.
That's awesome. That's awesome advice. Something just occurred to me, and as you talk, I'm thinking, believe it or not, I can do 2 things at once. So I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say it's $6,000.
Mm-hmm.
To some businesses, I mean, that's a lot of money.
It is.
Is there ways for them to, I know this is going to sound weird, but finance that? I mean, have you seen business owners go and get small term loans, anything of that nature where they can actually break this down so they're not having to foot the bill up front, but they can get your services?
I haven't run into that situation yet. I would imagine there's some support through the Small Business Administration, but I'm really guessing there.
Okay.
So I don't know. Yeah.
I'm going to throw this out there. I'm not a finance company, so please don't call me and ask me for financing. But we work with a lot of lenders in our business. So if you need some recommendations, contact me. I'll be happy to point you, which I hope is the right direction. At the end of the day, this is what this whole podcast is about, is we're here to help business owners as much as possible. So if you run into a situation, you want to hire Summer, and it looks like that cost might be too high for you, reach out to me. Ask me I'll do my best to help you find some way to make this happen. That I will promise you. Will it be 100%? No, but I can promise you I will do my best. One other thing I want to point out is there are a lot of people online that are offering advice in this arena. Be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Shop local. Find a person that's close to you that you can actually go and meet with, get to know them, and use somebody local. I know I've run into this. I've hired firms over the internet, and it never seems to work out.
Mm-hmm.
When you're spending money to improve your business, the last thing you want to do is waste it on somebody who is not going to be there for you. So my last little word.
Yeah, Russell, I have to echo that, because there's a lot of ways to develop content right now that sounds really good, and I have content that I use. But if you're a business owner and you're considering hiring someone like me or don't be afraid. I'm never offended if you ask for my resume. Happy to provide it to you. I'm not offended if you ask for references. I'm happy to connect you to some of my former clients. And I can't imagine anyone else in my space that wouldn't feel the same way.
Awesome. So Summer, if people have questions or if they want to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Either via LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So you can search Summer Dixon, Dixon Goldman, or just send me an email. It's summer@dixonstrategies.com.
Thank you so much, Summer. I greatly appreciate you being on the show today. Everybody that's listening, thank you so much. We appreciate it. If there's something that you would like to hear more about, please let us know. This content is for you. It's not for us. We do this to try to help business owners. That is our goal here at the Business Advocate. We will be posting this on YouTube. If you want to see what our mugs look like, look us up, the Business Advocate Podcast. Hopefully you find us. Leave comments. Let us know what we can do to make this better. My name is Russell Carrier. I'm the owner of First Choice Business Brokers of East Tennessee in Nashville. You've been listening to the Business Advocate Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.